Welcome to the Get Rid of Money Stress for Good workshop. We're gonna cover a lot, so hopefully you can take notes. Either you're taking notes or you have an AI assistant taking notes for you. Either way is fine. But we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna cover a lot of practical info. We're gonna do some motivation and mindset stuff. That's really a big piece for a lot of people. Is that I'm gonna share this on one of the slides, not to kind of give the punchline, but if you're taking notes, you might want to just remember the idea that we'll never outperform our beliefs. There's a couple different ways to say that. Our actions will never supersede our beliefs. So a lot of what we need to do is gain the belief. I mean, Tremaine was a professional fighter, so there's lots to do with the mindset. And this boxing is probably as technical of a sport as it is. It's probably more mindset than anything. There's guys that train their butts off for months to get in a ring and they turn purple because there's just so much mindset, so much pressure. So lots of us have different negative mindsets. We maybe weren't taught properly, about money, about business, about these different things. Maybe we love what we do. So that's part of it. But we're also going to talk about some real actionable things on how you can actually handle your money. And then I have a couple of slides that are purely business. They're called developing financial peace in your business. So again, thank you guys for taking your time to be here. I truly think you'll be better for it. My first comment is to kind of check yourself where you're at with your mindset right now. You can either say, hey, how do I feel about what's going to happen here in the next hour? And you have different options. You're going to be like, man, this is a waste of time. It's not going to work. I stink with money. Or you might be like, man, I'm excited. I'm going to learn some new things, new perspectives. And somebody that's here to help me, that cares, and I'm going to make the most of it. So a lot of what we get out of anything is going to be our mindset. So you can do that for anything. It's just a really good exercise to check. Are you in the fixed mindset or are you in the growth mindset? You guys have heard this before. Carol Dweck in her book Mindset talks about the difference between the fixed and the growth. And that's like everything. She claims that's like the biggest thing in life is where that mindset is. And there's lots to this. There's like whole books written on it. But from my in a nutshell, the fixed mindset is comparing to others. It's comparing to how you think you're supposed to be. It's very much it is what it is mindset. Like I'm not good in this area and that's just the way it is. And people will say that like, oh, I'm not good in math or I'm not good. And yeah, there's some truth to the idea that we have natural leanings towards being good at things. At the same time, the growth mindset says it's all about how I am today compared to where I was yesterday. It's all about the process, all about the journey. So that's kind of the mindset I encourage you to adopt with this and with anything. I'm going to take you back to about 12 years ago now. This is, so I have 4 kids, which you'll see them in a future slide. And my first daughter just turned 12. This is right around that time. And it seems like a different lifetime ago. On one level, at the same time, I feel like I can go back there in a second and feel all the emotions that came with it. I was getting ready for work. I was living the dream. I was training clients, helping them lose weight. Thought I was doing all the right things. I was married to the girl of my dreams. When one day I'm getting ready for work, it's early in the morning, I hear a knock on the door. I descend down my steps, kind of like a little bit out of it early in the morning, open my door, and to my surprise, there's this big muscular dude on my stoop. He's got earrings all over the place. He has earrings on his face. Those aren't called earrings, but he's got things all over his face. He has tattoos everywhere. He's actually like one of the nicest guys I've met, but he had my car hooked up to his tow truck because my car was being repossessed. And this was a real wake-up call for me. This was what I call my first financial awakening. I don't know if you've ever got your car repossessed. Most people probably haven't, but it's a really weird thing. Is a mix of shame, embarrassment, anger, all these different emotions that I was trying to process in the moment. My neighbor's going to see, and they probably wouldn't expect this, and I don't want them to see who I really am. How did I get to this point? People ask me that oftentimes, and it was really nothing crazy. It wasn't like one fell swoop. It was just little decisions over time. It was the first time I couldn't really afford what I was buying, and I put it on a credit card, and we discovered that we had $130,000 in non-mortgage debt, and it was just like, oh my gosh, felt like our worlds were colliding. And we had to make a decision at that point. It was really stressful. My wife and I couldn't talk about money without arguing. And the good news is we were relatively young. I don't know if I've ever talked to anybody who doesn't wish they started younger. I mean, that's true with a lot of areas. I know, like I mentioned before we started recording, that I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for like my whole adult life. And I was 19 when I started, and I felt like I was way too old. Now I got guys starting in their 40s and 50s. So you always kind of feel like you wish you were younger, and I do as well. But I had time on my side. I knew that time was going to pass either way. I was going to keep going on this path. I mean, I don't know where I would have wound up. My house was, really close to being foreclosed on, and marriage was in, I'm not going to exaggerate it. We weren't like talking about divorce, but we weren't doing great. I mean, there's a lot of stress in our marriage, and that bled over into all the other areas. And the good news is we made a decision. We decided we were going to do something different. We turned around. We started going the other way. We got on a plan. We made a plan for our debt. We created a vision, which is something I talk a lot about, and that was really powerful for us. We've done several since then, but we decided like where we wanted to go. We tried to become crystal clear about that, and we just started taking one step in front of the other. And one of the most important things that you don't hear from a lot of financial coaches or financial experts or whoever it is that we actually decided to work on our character, because that was the issue for us. It wasn't really like just we didn't have a budget. It was because we were trying to be people that we really couldn't afford to be. We weren't being honest with ourselves. So we didn't really need to work on our character. So we did that as well. And thankfully, the story has a happy ending. I'm going to share some positive results with you. And I do like to just make sure that you know where that's coming from. That's coming from a heart that wants to show you that there's like lots of progress that can be made over time. It's in no way to impress you. But this is something that's real new for us. So just a couple of weeks ago, so that original debt was $130,000 of non-mortgage debt. We paid that off in 5 years, taking a lot of the steps of the things that I now work with my clients on. And then just 7 years after that, which brings us to a few weeks ago, we ended up paying off everything, including the house. That was a total of $470,000. Like over time, it took about 12 or 13 years. So over time, lots of progress can be made, and we'll talk more about that. But I want to get to the business side, because lots of us here either have a business or we want to have a business, and we want to know how to dial down that stress on both areas. And what's interesting is that you'll see patterns with people. Most business owners that are struggling financially in their business are also struggling financially at home. Usually it's not one without the other. That's why we like to talk about both. So people will ask me, and sometimes it's hard for me to give a clear answer. Like, what do you do? Like, what do I do as a financial coach? Do you help businesses, make more money? Do you help people get out of debt? Do you help people save, build wealth? And it's kind of like it's a mix of a lot of that, because they're all related. The business is the vehicle that helps you personally, and that's definitely a point I don't want you to miss. Too many people, they're just all about their business, and that's great, but it becomes like almost too much of an obsession where they lose sight of what it's really about. Yes, the business is to serve people, it's to use your gifts, but it's also to take care of yourself, take care of your family. So if your business isn't doing that, it's not working. So we want to get them working together, and there's kind of more behind that. But for now, I just want to share the financial awakening I had around business. And going back around that same time, it was a crazy time for us. So not only did we have all that debt, had the car repossessed, we're at risk of losing the house, but I was leaving my full-time job as a professional martial artist. I was leaving the job to go on my own full-time with my training business. Long story short, but I've been training for many years. In fact, I've done it my whole entire adult life. But at one point, I took a position managing, teaching, and running a small chain of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu facilities. And I was doing that, and I was doing well with that, but I wanted to do my own thing, and I wanted to kind of let go of that to focus more. So I was making that transition. My wife was leaving her job to stay at home with our first daughter. So it was a crazy time for us. So I wanted to know, how do I get this stuff dialed in? Like, I want to do this right. I want to really be able to get ahead financially, so that I have margin in my life to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, work with the people I want to work with, all that stuff that we probably all want. We'd love for you guys that are on the chat, that are on live here, to share in the chat what is it that you want financially? Like, you don't have to get overly specific, but like, what would it do for you? What would it do for you to, to get on a plan and move closer towards that financial freedom that you want? Like, why is that? It's important. We hear it all the time. Know your why, but that is truly what's gonna drive us. Usually, it's not just the money. We might think it is like, oh, I want to make more money, but usually there's a reason behind that. Why do you want to make more money? I want to be home. I want to see my kids grow up, and there's all these different reasons that we might have. But I was fortunate enough, at least I thought, that I met a guy at church. His name was John, and he was the CFO, Chief Financial Officer of a huge business. They were like, I think they were either like 50 or $100 million in revenue, and that was way more money than I've ever even been anywhere near. And he had kind of liked me, and he decided to take me under his wing, and he said he was going to show me how it works on a high level when it comes to business and finance. So he invited me over his house on a Saturday, and I get there. I'm all excited to go over there. I get there, and I'm standing. I'm actually sitting. He's standing, and he's got his different screens up and all the spreadsheets. He's showing me what it looks like. This is how you budget. This is how you project. And I had like a funny thought. I just was looking at it, and I was like, this all sounds good, but it doesn't really make sense to me. Like, I don't know how this actually like would work with my business and would play out in my real life. For example, he was talking about budgeting for big items, and in my case, it was much smaller, relatively speaking. But if I wanted to buy, let's say, $1,000, even at that time, of equipment, that was a tremendous amount of money. So how was I going to pay for those things? And he couldn't really answer me. He just said, you put it in the budget and then you buy it. And I was like, how does that actually look? He's like, you budget for it, and you just kind of, it's like, for example, we're budgeting for a printer. It's $100,000, and we're going to put it in our budget, whatever it is, 10,000 a month over the next 10 months. And we're going to buy the $100,000 printer. I was like, I just don't see how that would work. Like, that money is not really there. It's not, that money is not literally on that spreadsheet, right? It's a representation of it. It's a phantom representation of it. And then, of course, years later, the famous Profit First comes out about allocating money into different accounts. And so I had that awakening that the traditional model was at least somewhat flawed, even back then, way before Profit First. So I started doing a lot of the principles that are now taught in Profit First, and those are some of the things that I do help clients with as well. So that's kind of how that started. And there we go. I want to get into the impact of not having a plan. I always I can't help it. I always throw out a lot of references as I do my talks, just because it's kind of who I am. They kind of create a lot of the content I teach. There's nothing new. So if you ever hear anything and read anything and you think it's new, it's not. It's really just the result of like other information, and it's maybe tweaked 10% to the person who's teaching it. And it's no different here. None of this stuff is like brand new material, but it's just the information that works, and it's the way that it's conveyed. And the best teachers and coaches are going to make things simple so that you can actually take action and do it. But there's a great book called Atomic Habits, you guys have probably heard of, if you haven't read it, by James Clear. And he has this exercise where if there's something that you want to accomplish, so let's say you want to become a millionaire. Let's just say, I just chose that for no real reason. You could use any example, right? You want to lose 10 pounds. One of the strategies you can use is you decide what you would do if you wanted to do the complete opposite. So let's use the millionaire, for example, right? I want to become a millionaire. Okay, what would I want to do if I wanted to have a net worth of negative $1 million? And you guys can answer that, to yourselves, but you think about, what would I do if I really wanted to have a negative $1 million net worth? What would I do? I mean, I could think of so many things that you would do. You'd probably not work hard. You'd probably like lay on your couch all day. You'd probably buy things you couldn't afford. You probably would care tremendously about what people would think of you. You probably would never talk to your spouse, if you're married, about finances. You probably would think all wealthy people were jerks and greedy, and money's not important, and lots of other things. And why do you do that? And I don't know the answer. I don't know all the science behind it, but there is something behind that. And if you guys know, you can share it, that causes you to become hyper aware when you're doing things that are leading to distraction. So there's two words I like to define, that's distraction and traction. What we all want to do, whether we realize it or not, is we want to avoid distraction. Definition of distraction for me is when we're going somewhere that's separately from where we want to go. So if I want to become a millionaire and I'm not doing that, like I'm distracted, right? If I want to listen to my child, but I'm on my phone, I'm distracted. That's the one that we all know. But distraction just really means anything that takes you off your course. And then traction is the opposite, right? That's being focused and prioritizing and doing the things that are going to be most likely to lead you towards your goal. So if you can keep aware of those things, like I like as a financial coach, it's no different than fitness coaching. Like, so when you have a client in front of you that wants to learn how to box or wants to lose weight or gain muscle, they usually know what they shouldn't do, right? I probably shouldn't eat this bag of chips. I probably should have this apple instead. I probably should get up and go to the gym. I probably shouldn't just oversleep and not work out, right? So a lot of our clients, they know these kinds of things, and it's the same thing for us. We know that we should have a plan. I'll make a kind of a bold statement here. If you are not if you don't have a plan for your money, so if you're not actively planning your money, so that means like what's coming in, what's going out, where it's going, what those dollars are doing for you. If you don't have a plan for that right now, you are not going to reach your potential. There's no way. There's no way you will. You have to have a plan for that. You guys raise your hand or throw it in the comment if you agree with that. That if you don't have a plan, you are not going to reach your potential. It's the same thing with any area. If you have no plan for your marriage or you have no plan for your fitness, you're not going to reach your potential. And we could talk about what that plan is, but you know that when you don't have it, the confidence is going to be limited. You are not going to be able to make the best decisions. And when you're not able to make the best decisions, you're not confident. People see that. They're not going to be as likely to work with you. They're not going to want to follow you. You're not going to know when to open up your facility, when to open up your second facility, when to make that hire, when to invest in this coach, when to do this marketing plan. Most business owners are just kind of doing random things because they don't have a plan and they're not confident. The second thing is this is powerful. If you're taking notes, you hear all these stats. Like one of them is that 50% of businesses are closed within 6 months. Have you guys heard of that before? It's a common stat that gets thrown around. It's actually true, so I'm not denying that, but there's much more to the picture. That is the lucky ones, according to Mike Michalowicz. I just had Mike Michalowicz, the author of Profit First, on my podcast. It's going to be released this coming Tuesday, so a quick plug for that for you guys to check that out. But he talks about that 50% that don't close. The ones that close are the fortunate ones. The ones that don't close are struggling and they're check to check. So very few businesses are following a plan that is profitable, that they're able to reach their financial goals. But 82% are the reason why businesses go out of business. 82% of them is because of this. And if you take a second and try to guess what it is, unless you know this already, most people think it's because they're not profitable. And what's really interesting is that's not the reason. Many of the businesses that go out of business are profitable. They still go out of business, and that's because they don't understand cash flow. So that's one of the biggest takeaways I want you guys to walk away with, is that we definitely want to know our profit and want to be profitable, but more importantly, I don't know who said this, it was Warren Buffett maybe, but the number one rule in business is to not run out of cash. And there's no way to do that if you're not planning it, if you're not tracking it, and if you don't know the difference between profit and cash. And then finally, this one sounds kind of like a judgmental thing. I don't mean it that way, but it's that you'll be like everybody else. You know, most people don't have a plan. And what happens to most people financially? We know it. I mean, I have the stats I keep in my notes section because I'm a big nerd with the finances, but there's all these stats on the percentage of people that don't have $1,000 to cover an emergency. They're check to check. The businesses that are one payroll period away from closing their doors, they're not fulfilled because they're just strapped by debt or other financial burdens. So you don't want to be like that. You don't want to be like everybody else, and that's what happens when you don't have a plan. Now we're gonna talk about the difference. We're going to compare that when you do have a budget, what happens. The first is that your confidence is going to soar, right? Obvious. It's the opposite of what I just said. So now your confidence is going to soar. You're going to have more swagger. You're going to be confident. People are going to want to follow you. You're going to build better teams. You're going to get more clients. There's something really powerful when you have a plan, in that you become a little less desperate in a sales situation, and that is really important. If you guys can think about, the person that kind of makes you cringe because they're going to ask you for a sale, and it's kind of like that stereotypical version of salesmen. And then there's other people who, like, they don't really care that much because they just want to work with the right people. That's who you become when you have a plan. So that confidence goes up. It helps business and life tremendously. This is probably my favorite part, and this is something I really want you to take away from the workshop, and that is that you're going to have a goal attacking system. I couldn't think of a fancier way to say that, but a goal attacking system is so powerful. People ask, what did you guys do, and how'd you get all these results financially? And one of the biggest things was we just kind of went all in. We just chose one specific goal. Another book, The One Thing, right? It's like get rid of everything else, all the distraction, all the clutter, and just get laser focused on what matters most. And you could do that with your client, like your ideal client. You can do it with your ideal financial goal. What is that one goal? It's too many people. They're trying to do a million different things and they're getting nowhere. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. Oprah Winfrey said that. So you have to decide what it is that you want, and this will let you do that. The plan will give you that goal attacking system, so you'll know, am I building up reserves right now, and that's what I'm focused on? I'm gonna get it, and then I'm gonna move to the next one. Am I paying off some debt? Am I building my savings? Am I building out my plan? I mean, there's lots of different options for that goal, but you're going to be crystal clear on where you're going. So it's all part of that plan, having that confidence. This is one of my favorite points from another book that is arguably one of my favorite books, and that's Good to Great by Jim Collins. There's lots of great principles in that book. One of them is the Stockdale paradox, which is really powerful. Encourage you to check that out when you get a chance. But for time's sake, I'm going to talk about this one, which is called the flywheel versus the doom loop. And just quick, if you're not familiar with, put it in the chat if you've read Good to Great or even know what it's about. But I will give you a quick overview. It is about Jim Collins and his team doing a study on businesses that went from good to great. And he defined those things. So a good business was a business that was just sort of plodding along. They were average for a long period of time, and then sort of out of nowhere they went boom, and they went way above the average, like multiples of the average, and they sustained that greatness for a long period of time, like 15 years. And you look at, like, what were the common denominators? Like, that's something we want to model, right? We all want to get great and stay great. And all these principles apply to anything. It's not just business. It's nonprofits, it's families, it's organizations, anything. And he found that the good to great companies, they applied this flywheel concept, which said this: there's a giant flywheel, and you try to push that flywheel with all your might, and it maybe doesn't move or budges a tiny bit. Take a deep breath, and you push it again, maybe a little bit harder, and maybe you get a tiny bit of more movement, but not really. And you get the idea. You kind of keep pushing and 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 keep pushing. And then eventually that flywheel gets spinning really fast, and you can't even stop it if you wanted to. And then the question is kind of like a trick question: is that flywheel was pushed thousands of times, which push was the most important? And if you were to answer, which I won't have you, people will give good answers. They'll say, oh, it was the first push. It was the last push. It was the one when you got really tired. And those are all really great answers. But he argues that it's none of those. He argues that it's every push that contributed to that flywheel getting spinning. And that's the mentality of companies, families, people with their finances that go from good to great, is that they're on the flywheel. They're not hopping around from one thing to the next. So follow the darn plan. It's like your clients, right? You want them to just follow the plan. You show up every day, you do your shadow boxing, you are going to get better. The problem is when you just jump from this to that, and then you don't make any traction. The doom loop, that's what they were doing. They were just trying one thing for a little bit, then they were maybe getting into another business, then another business. And there's nothing wrong with making transitions, because there's another book by Seth Godin, which is all about knowing when to kind of give up, not in a bad way, but knowing when, hey, I'm going to do something different now. So you do have to know the difference. But the good to great companies were the ones that they just stuck at it. Think about how many successful businesses do you know And chances are the ones that you do know, they've been at it for a long time. I just want to comment a little bit on the perfect plan. It doesn't exist. I used to think it did. I used to think my way was the best way, was the highway. I don't know if you guys ever went through that. Same thing with fitness. You got the kettlebell guy, or they think that like it's like if you have to, everybody has to train the way I train, or else they're all wrong. That's a poor attitude. None of us know everything. I don't know everything, and I just know what works for me, what works for my clients. I have principles that will apply, but there are definitely more than one ways to skin the cat. I just came to this conclusion after doing this for so long and seeing, what, some other people are doing things a little bit differently, and it's working out really well for them. So just being humble enough to admit that, and just want you to know that. We're going to get into the spending plan, the myths and the mistakes. The first one is not sticking with it long enough. And same thing with fitness, right? People come in, they maybe train with us for a month, they think it's not working, then they stop. They neglect to realize the importance. You guys comment in the chat if you've heard of these terms. These are business terms. They are lead and lag measures. So these people, they forget to acknowledge that there's a leading indicator and there's a lagging indicator. So when it comes to fitness, the lagging indicator is the thing you're measuring. So maybe it's body fat, maybe it's weight, maybe it's the amount of weight on the bar that you're trying to lift. The leading indicators are the things that are most likely to lead to that. So they are things like the number of workouts that you do, the number of meals that you have, the right amount of protein. They are in finances there, maybe the number of sales calls you made. There, all these things that you can do to get to those results. And those things just take time. There's reaping and sowing, and it doesn't happen overnight. Most of us didn't get to where we are overnight. So it's all the same stuff we teach our clients. I just want to share this. I didn't want to come across like that guy, but I just did a 6-week challenge and I got phenomenal results for myself and my fitness. And I just did this. All I did was the basic things. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't do any insane workout programs or insane, restrictive diets or anything like that. I just dialed things in a little bit. And this is me who was already working out all the time, eating pretty healthy. I got phenomenal results, and it only took 6 weeks. I'll show you guys the results on that. The second myth or mistake is that thinking that life will become boring, and nothing is further from the truth. If you guys ever read Extreme Ownership by Jocko, he talks about the fact that discipline equals freedom. It creates actually more excitement in life, because now what you're doing, what a spending plan is for your business and for your personal finances, it's, as John Maxwell said, it's telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it went. So that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be taking control. You're going to be gaining more freedom. You're going to be having more fun, because you're going to be able to live according to your values. You're going to be able to say, this is important to me, and this is where I'm going to spend my money. You guys have heard the quote or the idea that if you want to see what's important to somebody, don't ask them what's important. Look at how they spend their time and how they spend their money. So look at their calendar, look at their bank account. And that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to spend maybe very generously on the areas that matter most to us, and we're going to be very restrictive on the areas that really don't matter as much to us. So that is a myth, that life will become boring. We know that discipline equals freedom. If you want freedom in your life, in your fitness, you have to be disciplined with your fitness. If you want freedom in your life financially, you have to be disciplined with your finances. The third, this is the one that I struggle with the most, is thinking that you have to be perfect. I heard about this study that Precision Nutrition either put out or quoted, was that you only have to follow the plan 70% of the time to get really astonishing results over time. So I've gotten really great results financially, but I've been so far from perfect. I've done some things really well over a long period of time, but I've done other things really poorly. I've overspent in areas. I've forgotten about things. I've made all types of mistakes. I've done my plan, but it wasn't always perfect. And thankfully, I was able to stick with it, because most people, as we know, they quit at the 5-yard line. They just don't do the thing long enough because they're worried that they're not doing it perfectly. But if you just do most of the things most of the time, you strive for excellence, you realize that you're human, you're going to fall short, that over time you'll see those dramatic results. You guys comment in the chat if you also struggle with like that perfectionism, or maybe you think that you are you're not going to continue because you're not doing it as good as you think you should do. All right, let's move on here. I'm going to go over the takeaways, and then we're going to get into the specific plan, and then we'll get into the business side. We got lots to cover still, so hopefully you're taking notes. Hopefully you guys are still you're still taking good notes here. The first one is that you'll feel like you got a raise. This is so exciting. Raise your hand or comment if you want to raise. If you want to raise, all you need to do is create that plan, because you will feel like you got a raise. Because what happens is, this is for everybody. I don't care how good you think you are, you are losing money by not planning and tracking. Just because it's just the nature of life. Like things don't get paid attention to. I think Drew and I had this conversation. You end up with all these subscriptions that you aren't even using, and all that money could be going where? It could be going right in your pocket. It could be going right into your retirement, or right into your investments, or right towards you paying down your debt. It could go to somewhere that's much more beneficial. So you'll feel like you got a raise. One of my favorite quotes on this is that a small leak will sink a big ship. A lot of people think it's the big financial decisions that matter, and they do. It matters tremendously. I just moved, as I mentioned, from Long Island to the Middle Tennessee, and there's a difference. The cost of living is less here, and that is a difference. But it's the small things that really add up. So you need to have the big things in place, but you also need to have the small things in place. The small things is what helped us more when we were starting out. The second one is that it's not as hard as you think. This is one of those areas where, if whether we're led to believe it, or we have all these experts acting like you can't do it. You need to maybe hire somebody and pay thousands and thousands of dollars to learn how to get ahead financially, and there's all these sophisticated investment strategies. I had no financial education, no background, and I was able to accomplish quite a bit. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You do not have to have a advanced degree in economics or accounting or anything, both for business and personal. In fact, it's the opposite. I'm telling you, it's the simplistic way that is going to be more effective for you. Now we're going to get into an actual plan and how that might look. So this is the potential cash flow plan. This is where you're going to take the meat and potatoes and say, hey, I'm going to actually apply this, and I'm going to start doing this, and this is going to make a difference in my finances. So this is my best representation of how our lives look. So life can be really chaotic. You guys give me a head nod or something if you think life can be chaotic, and I don't know everybody's situation, but I have kids, got businesses, we have things that are constantly coming up, we have family issues, we have work issues, we have money coming in. Maybe there's different revenue streams and they come in different ways and different times. We have different types of bills. Some of them are due on the 15th, some of them are due on the 5th, some of them are due like every 2 months, some of them are just like very random. I mean, you have all this stuff. Sometimes my income is higher than on other months, and it's like, how do I put all this stuff together? And that's kind of what I'm going to be answering for you right now. So we're going to talk about, to really simplify this, we're going to talk about 3 types of expenses and how you're going to handle those. First, we're going to define them. Always big on defining the terms so that we're on the same page. We have a common language. You could use my terms, or you can create your own. The important is that you keep them consistent. So my wife and I know when we talk about this is monthly automatic, we both know what that means, right? So monthly automatic is a bill that is, get ready for this, it's monthly and it's automatic. So that one is pretty self-explanatory. It's due the same time every month. So it's always due on the 5th, and it's always $100. That's a monthly automatic expense. And we're going to get to how to pay for those in a second. The second one is frequent or daily. You can call that something different if you'd like. That's anything that's due like 1 month or more, but it's not the same amount, and it's not always on the same day. So it's not monthly automatic, but it's also pretty regularly. So an example of that would be food, maybe a haircut, really anything that you're buying on a regular basis. You can put it to that category. And the last one is random. This is one that trips people up. Random are things that are due, but they're not monthly, they're not automatic, and they're not frequent. So 2 of the best examples that I could think of on this on the personal side would be holiday time. Many of us, we buy a bunch of gifts during the holidays, we're buying more food, we're doing different parties, and that only happens during that time. Another another here is vacations. So maybe in the summer you go away for a week and it costs you $3,000, and it doesn't happen every month, of course. On the business side, you can kind of just look at these on either side. So for the business, your rent or your subscription to your CRM, I mean, those would be monthly automatic. Frequent daily would be like your food, eating out, office supplies. Random on the business side could be the same. Like we do a big holiday party for our staff, so that would be a random expense. Maybe equipment. Every December we purchase equipment, so that's going to be a random expense. So that's kind of how you would categorize those. So now we're going to talk about what you actually do, how you pay those, and some specific steps that you can take. I didn't say this yet, and I usually do. That is, I want you, as you're taking your notes, to think about at least one specific step you're going to take as a result of this workshop. Please do me that favor and acknowledge that you can. Say, I promise I will do one action step. So you're going to put on your calendar and you're going to do it. Maybe it's one of these things I'm mentioning now. Maybe it's something I already talked about with the mindset, something you're going to do. Maybe it's something else that was sparked that I didn't actually say, but it kind of gave you that thought, oh yeah, I need to take care of that because that's going to help me financially. That would really mean a lot to me and really show that our time was valued. So you're going to make a list of the monthly automatic expenses. And the way you're going to pay those is pretty simple, probably what you're already doing. You're going to pay those out of your primary checking account. And the only other thing I'll add to that is you may want to switch your dates just depending on when you get paid. Again, I don't know everybody's scenario, but some people get paid monthly, some people weekly, some people bi-weekly, some people don't pay themselves at all, and they're just pulling money out of their business. Some people have all of it together. These are all things that I help people with, but that's generally the way that I recommend paying those. I like color coding them as well. So you're going to make all of your monthly automatic ones green, for example, and then you're going to make all your daily ones red. So that would be food, toiletries, business. It would be those regular expenditures. One strategy that I really like is this, especially if you're somebody who wants to get and stay out of debt. I like to use cash for those regular daily purchases. There's something powerful about it. Let's see if I have I actually don't own credit cards, by the way. Fun fact about me. All right, so let's say I have my card and I hand it to you. Then what happens? I swipe it or I tap the thing and I put it back in my pocket, and I didn't feel any feeling of loss. All right, now I compare that. It's pathetic. I have $1 in my wallet, literally $1. Now I take my dollar and I give it to you for your item, and I don't get it back. So there's a feeling of loss attached to that. So there's a powerful teaching tool in that. It helps you really determine like what you need versus what you want, and it helps train you on what you're actually spending. This is great if you're just trying to get a control of your spending. Another option is to use a separate debit account at your bank for those purchases. So that's what we do. I don't do the cash. I used to do that method. Now we use a separate debit account. So we just transfer our money and we use that other account. So there's a limit on that, right? It's like that small plate idea. So that's going to be the daily. And then finally, there's going to be the random. And those are the ones like vacations, equipment purchases, those holiday time expenses. For those, I highly recommend setting up a separate account at a separate bank. And you're going to take the total amount that you need for those items for the year, divide it by 12, and set up yourself an automatic transfer to pay those things. So for example, simple math, if you have a vacation next July and you know it's going to cost you $2,400, you are going to transfer $200 a month to your vacation fund. And then next July, you're going to have the $2,400 that you need. You're going to have the best vacation because it's not going to follow you home. You're not going to owe anything for it. And you're going to feel so good about yourself, I promise. So we've already paid for our next year's vacation this year because we did this method, or at least partly. And you don't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect. I didn't have all of it saved up, but I had it in another fund that I was able to transfer. All right, so I want to do a quick recap. We talked about a lot. You guys raise your hand or put in the chat if you found this helpful, if you found at least one thing that encouraged you, inspired you, or an action that you're going to be taking. And I'll do a quick recap. We talked about what it is like when you don't have a plan, the impact of that. We talked about what happens when you have a plan. That confidence is going to soar. We talked about the myths and mistakes, thinking you have to be perfect. We talked about the takeaways that you're going to have more freedom and you're going to feel like you got a raise. You're not going to be like everybody else. Then we talked about the actual plan, how to categorize those expenses, the frequent daily expenses, the random expenses, and the monthly automatic, how to pay for each one. You're going to plan this stuff, you're going to track it, and your life's going to get better, not instantly, but over time. You're going to see amazing results. You're going to feel a better identity about yourself because you're going to be somebody who's being a good steward. You're managing what you've been given well, and you're going to be reaching those goals that you have for yourself. We're going to just go through a couple more things here before we wind down. I want to be sensitive to everybody's time, but this is a quote from my friend named Unknown. It says, budgeting isn't about limiting yourself. It's about making the things that excite you possible. So don't be scared of it. You got to lean into it, and you'd be amazed what it can do. That's a link. It's probably not a best link because it's hard to kind of copy that, but you can take a screenshot of that. That's to schedule a Q&A call with me. That would just be a time where we chat about what you have going on to see if I could help you. You can also do that by just reaching out to me on social media or by emailing me. I don't know if Drew is going to send out something, you can include that. And then I do want to talk about financial freedom for your business. Who wants financial freedom for their business? These are going to be some powerful concepts. We're going to talk about principles, strategies, as well as action steps for you to take, as well as possibly an exciting announcement. All right, so the first one is having structure to facilitate growth is essential. If you don't have a structure in place for your business finances, the growth is just going to lead you somewhere that you don't want to go faster, right? Because you're not going to be able to facilitate that growth. You need to have a structure. It's just like building a house. You need to have a structure in place so that you can build it. In business, you need to have a structure in place financially, like a plan for that money and a plan for the tracking of that money and a plan to have goals and reach those goals. If you don't have that, it's going to be pretty stressful, which brings me to the second point, which is that growing a business, if you're doing it the right way, and I understand that this is a very much a mindset, is that it should decrease stress. So think about that. So here's another exercise for you to do. Write down on a piece of paper, growing a business will do what? And think about what does it feel like? What are the mindsets around that? If your natural mindset is, if I grow a business, I'm going to be stressed out. I'm not going to have any family relationships. Life's going to be really hard. We all know this, right? What's going to happen if you believe that? If you believe that, you're not going to do the things you need to do to facilitate that growth. But I'm telling you it's possible because there's many people who grow businesses and decrease stress. It's not easy, but it's doable and it is simple. I said this before, but your behavior will never supersede your beliefs. So you can't outperform those beliefs. I first learned this in Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. So he talked about that we're never going to outperform our self-image. So what you believe matters. So I encourage you to question yourself. Do I believe that I could become a millionaire? Do I believe that I could become a multimillionaire? Do I believe? It's okay if it's not, but it starts with that belief. I shared this already, simplicity scale. So whatever you do, whatever method you use, whatever structure you put in place, it has to be simple so that it can scale over time when it grows. You're the CEO of your business. All of us have businesses that are small, relatively speaking. So we're going to need to take the reins on this. You may have somebody that helps with this, but you got to be the one that really understands it, really makes the decisions. You don't have to be entering your transactions in a spreadsheet, but you need to know what's going on in your business. Okay, now we're going to get to the action steps. One of them is it's kind of a plug, but not really. It's not even on here, but it's one of the first investments I encourage people to make, and that is to get a bookkeeper. So raise your hand or put in the chat if you have a bookkeeper. Rate yourself on a scale of either 1 to 5, or you could do like the color coded scale. So red would mean like I don't have a bookkeeper and things are all chaotic. Yellow would be I kind of have one, but they don't really do it right, or I'm not happy with them. And the green would be like I have a bookkeeper and they're awesome. They provide me what I need. So rate yourself on that. That's important, really important. That's one thing I did early on. I think I learned from my personal mishaps, and that's really helped me a lot. I've gotten better and better now. I have somebody I'm really happy with, and that's like the slight plug is I'm working on a component of my business to provide that service for people. So it's going to be launching soon. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, that would be something that we could discuss. Let's go over the actions here. So I just hit 2 there. So it's creating a success statement. I like doing that in any area I'm doing. We actually did it recently. You guys are gonna think I'm the biggest nerd, but we just recently went on a family camping trip, and we created a success statement before we went. So like basically we're saying like, what does success look like? We're driving back, and what would we like to have seen happen? Like, it's just a really good exercise to do. And it's the same thing with your finances. So you can do it personally or with a business. So what does it look like? For me, it's that I have peace and clarity over my finances so that I can make the most effective decisions. Then we talk about what that means, and we're going to go through some of that. So I have a system for tracking. You can just use a basic spreadsheet. There's nothing wrong with that. Use a spreadsheet. You can set up some graphs to track different things over time, but you want to determine the system that you're going to be using to tracking the numbers in your business, like your sales and your leads, but you also want a system for tracking the financial metrics, which we're going to talk about. Now we're going to talk about that. So define what needs to be tracked. Here are some examples. You may want to track, or you will want to track, your total revenue. You're going to want to track your profit, would be your revenue minus expenses. You're going to want to track your expenses. You're going to want to track your cash, as I talked about in the earlier point. And so you're not one of those 82 percenters. You're going to want to track your cash flow. You're going to want to track your EFT. Most of us that are in the fitness field, you want to track your monthly recurring revenue, because that's going to be something that you can sort of guarantee and sort of expect, and you want to increase that number over time. That's real simple, but if we can just increase that number a little bit over time, that's going to really make us have the life that we're looking to live, because that number probably matters more than anything, especially if we can keep everything else in check, because that's money that we can keep bringing in over time. Those one-shot sales, you got to keep doing them. So we want to track that recurring revenue, maybe your revenue per category. So if you have different components of your business, like of course I do, right? I have a gym, I have a financial coaching business, or different services. So I want to see which ones. I essentially want to make sure that I'm not covering one part of my business with another, right? So if I have a boxing program and it's doing really well, and I have a personal training program, and then the boxing program is covering the expenses of the, I don't want to do that, right? Because I want that profit to go to better use. So define what needs to be tracked. I just gave some samples. There may be some other things that are unique to your business. And then here's something that too many fit owners. I just did a podcast episode on treat your business like a business. I don't know if anybody listened to that, but if not, go back and listen to that, because so many fitness business owners, they just don't treat their business like a business. And I'm not trying to be hard on you, but go to a business that you consider like a real successful business, and you're going to see like how a real business operates. Like they take it seriously. Like they're having the meetings, they have the metrics, they're tracking their progress, they're setting those KPIs, and they're working on the projects, and they have good communication, and they're not perfect. They have lots of problems. We all do, but I do see a difference between some businesses and the way a lot of gyms are. And it's not just gyms, like there's different services and that do the same thing. But I think a lot of us, we just like fitness, we like helping people, so we neglect to treat it like a business. But if you can change that mindset, take it seriously, don't take yourself too seriously, but take your business seriously. It matters, because there's people that need your help. I'm telling you, you're going to see a tremendous difference. It's just switching that mindset, if nothing else. So you're going to want to know, what did I do last month, last quarter, last year in those metrics? And you're going to want to be able to know that pretty easily. If it takes you an hour and a half to find out how much revenue you made last month, something's wrong, right? You should be able to find out in about 2 minutes or less. You're going to want to know the present scenario in all those numbers, or whatever ones that are possible. So how much cash do I have in my business right now? What's my revenue right now? And then, of course, the future, there's two components to this. One is your actual budget, which is going to be a conservative estimate of the revenue that you expect. And then you're going to list out the expenses that you project, and you're going to kind of see where you land. And then there's projecting, which is going to be based on the goals and the targets that you have. So a budget and a projection are two different things. So a budget is like what you can reasonably expect, let's say with like 70% accuracy. And a projection is like, this is what it is now, but if I get 5 more clients, which is what I'm working actively towards, this is how that's going to look. So you're going to want to be able to have both of those in mind, and have goals. You guys, I encourage you to have specific goals that are in writing, that have deadlines, that are specific to you, that are realistic for you, that are important to you, and have those written. And those should be financial goals. You should have at least 3 financial goals, personal and business. So there might be a financial metric, it might be a profit or a take-home pay. It might be to pay off a certain amount of debt, to build a certain amount of savings, but have a goal that you're actively working towards, because finances will affect like almost every area of life. That's why it's so important to have those goals. So make sure you have them. So if you don't have them, we're not going to take the time now because we only have 3 minutes left, but block out some time to write out some goals. If you do nothing else from this talk, financial goals. And then if you need help, that's why I'm here. I think, then defining the rhythm and communications. That's the big thing. It's not just setting those goals, but it's to set up a rhythm of how often you're going to track them and sticking to that rhythm. So one thing I like is putting it in the calendar. So every Friday at 12 o'clock, I'm going to check in on where I'm at against my goals, or at least every month. But you're going to determine that. If there's other people that are in your communication, like your spouse, your team, like if you have, leadership team and they're involved in those conversations. We used to have a meeting where we would cover the finances every Monday, and it was on our calendar, and we did, and my wife and I put them on our calendar as well. Here's the final contact stuff. So there's my email. It's billy@lifitnessbootcamp.com. Definitely check out the podcast, Your Fitness Money Coach. I would love to hear your feedback on that. And then, of course, on Instagram, I would love to connect. I'd love to talk to you if you're interested in kind of taking things to the next level and just kind of working on that big, beautiful future together. I would love the opportunity. But even if you just wanted to connect in any way, that would be awesome. Appreciate you guys taking your time. Super excited to hear about your action taking, and I got your back.
Billy, thank you. That was wonderful. That was a phenomenal overview. I really appreciate it. We'll just encourage us all to, take it in bite-sized pieces so we actually take action, and then lean on Billy's help to get expert advice on how that stuff should frame up. So thanks, Billy, and thank you all for making the time to join us today.
Nice. I just want to say I appreciate everybody's comments and you guys being honest with where you're at in terms of the steps you need to take. So that's really really cool for me to see that. It's encouraging to see that it's going to make a difference for you guys.
Yeah, awesome. And hey, Billy, you do a newsletter too, right? Like weekly?
Oh yes, yeah, I do weekly. So the original goal was twice a week. I kind of send out an email about the podcast on Tuesdays, and then I usually do one more later in the week. And sometimes I have a little bit of like a burst of creativity, and I'll send out an extra one. But it's on average like twice a week.
Cool. Yeah, I know, I get it, and I always appreciate it. So, yeah, I'll make sure everyone who was here today gets this recording, and I think Cindy can even share a note, so we might have those for everyone too.
That's awesome. Props to Cindy for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Have a great weekend, and yeah, here to help. So anything we can do, let me know. Have a phenomenal weekend, and thanks for joining us live.
Awesome.